Hey, Walt here from WaltandPA.com, as well as Stogie Review with another Shooting the Breeze video. And this time it is another range trip. And while I was there, I took my video camera to the range again, my little flip cam, which I've been keeping in my range bag, and I did a little bit of recording again this week. Now, if you recall, last week I did a video outlining my previous range trip, and it was pretty bad. My shots were all over the place. I wasn't having a very good time, and even though going to the range is generally a big stress relief, you know, I came back kind of frustrated last week, and I really couldn't figure out what I was doing wrong. So I decided to go again this week and give it another shot. And you know, it's kind of funny because when I drew the gun and I put the gun out there and I looked at the sight, it was like a light bulb went off, and I saw everything that I was doing wrong the week before. So, you know, just stepping away and regrouping and trying again can sometimes be the best medicine, I guess, because my shots were far better this time. They were still a little spread out, but I'm beginning to see what I'm doing wrong, and I realized that what I need to do is a lot of dry fire practice, both drawing and dry firing, and just, you know, dry firing to get that trigger pull down. So what I did was I hit the range with about 150 rounds of 9mm. I wound up shooting about 75 rounds, and then I switched over to 22 and just kind of had some fun at the end. But this time around I did something similar to the dot drill that I've seen on pistoltraining.com. Instead of using the dot target, I wound up taking one of my homemade IDPA targets to give it a try, and basically I was just drawing, sighting the gun and firing a single shot, center mass, reholstering, and then doing that over and over and over again. I think I fired about 30 rounds that way, and then I switched over to 2 shots, one center mass, one head, you know, reholster the gun, draw the gun, center mass, head, and, you know, I was kind of bouncing around like that. And basically it was just a lot of practice in drawing and getting the gun where it needed to be and pressing the trigger. And by firing one shot at a time, you really force yourself to, you know, get into the groove of how to draw and place the gun and things like that. So without any further ado, let's take a look at my first clip from, you know, that little range session. Alright, so that was the first string of shots that I fired. I think there were about 10 there. And so you're probably wondering, you know, what did I do, or you know, what did I see that I was doing wrong that I readjusted this week? Now, the first thing is when I drew the gun and I put it out, my grip was really comfortable. When I started shooting last week and the groups were spreading apart, I found myself trying to force the gun to stay still, and I had this white knuckle incredible super grip on the gun, and that seemed to only jerk the gun around as I was squeezing the trigger. So I've got a death grip with one hand, and then I'm really forcing my weak hand or my support hand against the gun, and naturally I guess I was getting a little bit of wiggle out of my hands, and that's part of the reason why my shots were spread apart. So this week I got a firm grip, but it was comfortable. It was a nice, relaxed, just firm grip, and then put my support hand in there comfortably. Now, I was getting a little bit more muzzle rise than I have before, but it was much more comfortable to shoot, and I think that more practice with this type of grip will be better than trying to make that death grip work for me. The second thing was, last week I was focusing a little more on the target than I was on the front sight. And what was happening was, I guess I was getting sort of like a mid-range focus where the target was fuzzy or blurry and the front sight was a little blurry. And this allowed me to see both objects, but I wasn't really focused crisp on either one. And that was causing a problem last week. This week, I was looking at that front sight post, and it was crystal clear, and the target was blurry. And when that first shot broke, it was right where I wanted it, right in that main circle, that scoring ring. And I wanted to cheer when I saw that black hole and that single black hole in the target. So I reholstered, and it was kind of like a sigh of relief. I drew the gun and I fired the second shot, and it was right where I wanted it to be. And then I started thinking about it a little. And that third shot, if you watch the clip again, you'll see that after the third shot breaks, I kind of lower the muzzle of the gun a little bit and peek my head up over top to see where the round went. I felt it as soon as I did it, but I dipped the gun a little bit, anticipating the recoil when that third shot broke, and I knew that it wasn't going to be where I wanted it to be, and sure enough, it was low. So I was kind of forcing myself to stay focused on that sight and just press the trigger and let the shot break. And one of the things that I learned with archery a long time ago was, when you're on that release button, if it surprises you when it breaks, like when you don't really know when it's going to go off, the shot is generally much better than when you know when it's going to go off. Or at least that was my experience when I was younger. So in this scenario, when all of a sudden I feel the recoil of the gun, and I wasn't, obviously I know it's going to go off from squeezing the trigger, but I don't know that precise moment that it's going to go off. When I get that little bit of surprise, I look down range, and sure enough, the shot is right where it needs to be. So when I'm not anticipating the shot breaking, my shots are better. And again, that's where I think a lot more dry fire practice is going to do me a world of good. So after that first string, I was feeling pretty good, and I loaded up another magazine and I did another string, and here's that next string. I think it's 10 shots long, just like the last one. Alright, well, that was my next string of 10 shots, and as you can see, more than half of my shots were where they needed to be in that center scoring ring. And I had some that were inside of the secondary scoring ring, but one or two that were outside of that even. And I'm positive that those shots were anticipating the recoil and dipping the muzzle. And again, I think dry fire practice will help resolve that issue. But for the time being, I'm pretty happy with the way I'm progressing. I know ideally I would like one big massive hole in the center of that scoring ring, but you know, that's something to strive for. At this point, at 15 yards, I'm looking to maintain all of my shots within that scoring zone. I don't care if they're varied a little bit. And as a last resort, I want them inside of that secondary scoring zone, that, you know, that shape, that thing. But at any rate, one or two shots were even outside of that, and again, it's from dipping the muzzle, I think. And if these look terribly slow, it's because they really are. I mean, in the back of my mind, I'm concerned about how fast I'm shooting, but for the sake of this exercise, I was more worried about drawing the gun, getting it mounted, and breaking the shot, and doing so, you know, smoothly. You know, I wasn't worried about how fast I was doing it, and you know, that'll with repetition, speed will come on its own. For right now, I'm just concerned with in practicing the fundamentals, and obviously dry fire practice is one of those fundamentals. So here is the next string of fire, and once that's done, you know, we'll look at the target and talk about that some more. So I'll be right back. Well, in that string, there were a couple of instances where I saw myself flinch, and again, you know, dry fire practice, dry fire practice, dry fire practice, and you know, obviously I'm dipping the muzzle a little bit, and that's where my shots are breaking low. But you know, another thing I'm not quite sure about is my stance. I mean, I know that I'm leaning forward, and I've got my shoulders forward, my legs are spread apart about shoulder width, and I've got a more aggressive stance than I have before. But I'm wondering if I should be leaning even further and have an even more aggressive stance. I mean, because the further I lean forward, the more almost backwards recoil I'm going to get. You know, if I'm leaning back, I have a feeling that you know, when the gun goes off, my shoulders are going to rise back. If I'm leaning forward, you know, that's much more, you know, mass to overcome to get me to you know, to lean back. So that's something that I think I may need to practice a little bit and see just how far forward I need to be leaning when I'm breaking the shots. But again, so far so good. You know, about half of my shots were in that center mass section, and the others varied a little bit. But again, you know, I'm still happy with the progression of where I'm at, and you know, a lot more practice will definitely tighten up those groups. But for now, I'm happy with what's going on. And for the next clip, I change things up a little bit. When I draw the gun, I fire one shot center mass, and then I fire one shot at the head, and then I reholster and start all over again. Now, in this series, I loaded 5 rounds per magazine, so that in one of those sequences where I'm firing, I'm forced to reload the gun. It gives me a little bit of reload practice, and you know, I need to work that into dry fire practice as well. But it was just a little extra, and again, I'm still firing very slow and working that way. So here's the next clip. Alright, in this clip you got to see an awesome equipment malfunction. What happened was I put the mag pouch on my belt, and apparently I didn't get it seated all the way down. There's like a little step in the mag pouch that snags underneath your belt, so that when there's upward pressure, it grabs your belt and it doesn't come out of your pants like in my little clip there. And you know, I had to kind of fight with it a little bit off camera to get it back in, because you know, I really snugged the belt down tight, and I need to get a better belt. I've just got this what was a heavy duty belt for target standard, and you know, it's just kind of a dress belt, but I wear it when carrying concealed and things like that, and it seems to work, but sometimes it's a headache, especially getting my phone on and off of it, because it tends to twist. So I actually ordered a heavy-duty Amish belt, what they're calling an Amish belt, from Hank's Clothing or something like that. It's supposed to be fantastic for concealed carry and things like that. It's a much stiffer belt, and it's quite a bit thicker. I think it's like twice as thick as the belt that I have, and it was only like $30. So I put an order in for that. It should be coming in a few days, and I'm looking forward to giving that a try. But as far as the actual shooting goes in this clip, you know, one of the things that I found most difficult was focusing on the front sight and breaking the shot. And then instinctively, I'm looking down range to see where the shot went. So when I reposition the gun to take the shot at the head, now I need to refocus my eyes on that front sight. What I need to sort of practice until it becomes instinctual is break the shot, move the gun, break the shot. Not you know, don't get that out of focus look at the target in between shots, because obviously it takes a lot of time to readjust, and you know, a lot of time is maybe a second or two, but you know, that's quite a bit of time, especially when you're looking to get involved in the action shooting sports. So that's definitely something I need to work on. And again, as you'll see in this clip, again, I'm anticipating the recoil at certain points, and shots are breaking low. Even at the head shots, that second shot that I was taking, even there was a little bit of anticipation, and some of those shots broke low. But you know, I'll work on that later. But still pretty happy with the results that I'm getting. Well, I know this video is getting kind of long, so I want to keep things moving kind of quickly. But in this clip, it's the first time that I did a real sort of action reload, and I was pretty happy with seeing how it turned out, because before I was keeping the gun really close to my body, and one of the safety issues that I was seeing before is that I had a tendency to cock my wrist and the muzzle was pointing up over the berm. In this case, it's more out in front of me, more kind of like in my work area where I'm reloading and then getting the gun right back out again. And here the muzzle is always pointing downrange, and I'm going right back into firing. So I'm really happy to see that I'm getting over that hump of having a safety issue where I'm pointing the muzzle over the berm. But here is the next clip. Well, that clip was kind of short. I was at about 70 rounds, so I loaded 5 into the magazine, and I figured after 75 I'd be done for the day. So I loaded up 5 and then just sort of drew and fired 1 shot at center mass. I think once I fired 2 shots at center mass. But at any rate, you know, all in all, I was really happy with how I performed with the 9mm. I mean, I know I have a long way to go, but I left the range pretty happy. After that, I did some shooting with my wife's Beretta Neos 22, and I'll tack those clips on next. But in that case, you know, I was having a lot of trouble with that gun firing high right, and I really didn't want to adjust the sights, because I was under the impression that I had to drift the rear sight. Well, while I was at the range, I just happened to look down and realized that everything is adjustable with a screw. So I pulled my my Zycar MTX multi-tool, which is basically a set of cigar scissors that fold up, and they have tools inside of them. And one of the tools was a flathead screwdriver, so I was able to adjust it really quickly and easily. And if my wife has trouble with that gun later on, I'll readjust the sights for her, and it shouldn't take more than a couple of seconds. So here is just some fun shooting with the 22. Well, that's going to about do it for the Shooting the Breeze range report for July 8th, 2011. And one of the things I learned was that the 22 is really not a good training aid for my Smith & Wesson M&P. Because the slide, or because the barrel is longer, it tends to be a little front heavy, and I feel myself sort of forcing or actively pulling the barrel up, as opposed to feeling more balanced with the M&P. But all in all, I was really happy with the way everything worked out. I mean, it's a huge step in the right direction over last week's just miserable shooting experience. So, like any other video, I appreciate you watching through just about a half an hour of me shooting and rambling on. But if you can give me any shooting tips, I would really appreciate it. So, until next time, my cigar's done. But happy smoking, happy shooting, and I will catch you later.